Pam, you're just going to hit the record button when I say we've started, and I don't even have to think about that. Is that true? Go with yes. All righty. I'm going to call the school committee meeting to order on April 6th. We'll do a little bit like we did in the last meeting. I'll go through some of the notes around conducting an open meeting via remote access. So as a preliminary matter, this is Paul Brennan, chair of the school committee. What I'll do is a roll call, and I just ask that you can hear, and then if somebody can't hear you, we'll just make sure everybody can hear each other. So Peter Tufts.
Here.
Nate Jerome.
Here.
Bruce Edwards.
Here.
Kristen Pfeifert-Clark.
Woo, thank you.
Hey.
Sorry.
Nancy, you know I can get one of the two. Ted Friend.
Here. Hear you.
Here.
Nancy Kaninsky.
Here.
Excellent. This is an open meeting of the Sutton School Committee. It's conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order. If you're not aware, this is due to the COVID-19 virus. The meeting will not feature public comment, although it is being recorded and will be replayed. The school committee is, as you can tell, convening via video conference via the Zoom app. And I had mentioned it's being recorded. Please take care for the participants not to share your screen. If you share the screen, it will be recorded. So if you've got a really good game of Tetris going on or something like that, it's going to be recorded. All of the meeting materials were available on the Sutton School website, including the governor's order allowing a open meeting via remote access. The ground rules for an effective and clear conduct of the meeting. I will introduce each speaker on the agenda, and then I'll go down through the line of members. I've got a little post-it right here with everybody's name. So we'll go through the individuals, ask for questions, comments, and then I'll circle back if there's been a great deal of commentary. Please remember to mute your mic or your computer when you're not speaking. Remember to unmute it when you do want to speak. Remember to speak clearly. So that's probably just an exercise for me. You guys are all set. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair. And finally, all of the votes we take will be taken via roll call. That's it for that bit. As I said, we call the meeting to order, and the first item on the agenda is the consent agenda. What I would do on this one is simply ask for a member to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Peter Tufts.
Tufts. Second.
Excellent. Any questions, Peter? Comments?
Not me.
Nate, questions, comments?
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Kristen
No, I'm good.
and Bruce?
Nope.
Excellent. This is a roll call vote, so we'll go right back again. If we could start with Pete.
Tufts, aye.
Jerome, I.
Clark, aye.
Edwards, aye.
And Paul Brennan, I carries 5-0. Ted, I'm not sure. This next item on the agenda was a student update. I don't know if we have students joining today, or we may come back to that.
Yes, I had 2 students that planned on attending. We'll wait and see if they pop on.
Excellent. And then the next item on the agenda is the COVID-19 update. Mr. Friend.
Just a couple of things. I had mentioned at the last meeting that we would have a conference call with Jim Smith and Tim Harrison and Nancy and myself to discuss what we do with aftercare and cafeteria personnel. And I agree with Jim Smith. Probably the smartest thing to do is we're going to pay for them out of the revolving accounts. This will take a hit in our revolving accounts. And if the cafeteria gets to a a point where we're going to need to transfer money. Jim plans on putting a warrant item on the fall town meeting to transfer money out of free cash where he has more than $1 million in free cash, and he would just rather handle it that way, as opposed to having people go on unemployment. The other risk of going on unemployment is that, for instance, the cafeteria, the school year ends, they are not able to collect unemployment in the summer, but if they go on unemployment now and we don't go back, they'll be able to collect unemployment throughout the summer. And so that's his recommendation, and I agree with him. Also, our aftercare program is applying to start an emergency daycare center to service families of first responders. And so we're waiting to hear whether that comes to fruition or not. We're also able to now cover any food that we distribute, and Nancy will go in this in more detail to cover some of the costs. We're able to claim, and Nancy will go over this, all of the breakfasts and lunches that we give out, whether they're on free or reduced lunch or not. So today, for instance, we delivered over 500, this goes to the whole week, over 500 breakfasts and lunches, which we get reimbursed for, and Nancy will go over those numbers. The other update under COVID-19 is the public health nurse, Cheryl Rowinski, they are going to use the high school office suite and a couple of other offices. And all of our school nurses, along with Cheryl and several other volunteer nurses, are tracking regional COVID-19 cases. And so this is part of the new plan. So they come in, they make phone calls, and they track all of the different contacts. So they're using our high school office area nursing suite. Let me just see if there's anything else on the COVID-19. I think that's just about it. I did do I'm sorry. We've done a survey of staff. I'll forward that out to you. I got some results this afternoon. Not everybody's done it. We have 83%. The one area that I'll speak to is we asked them how many hours a day they are interacting with students. And approximately 80% of the staff report a minimum of 5 hours of contact with students, and many more than that. So I think the teachers, by and large, are communicating on a regular basis during the day with the students. We asked several questions, how much prep time they're doing, how much parent contact, student contact, and I'll give it one more day to see the results, and then I'll forward it off to the committee so everybody can see that.
Great. Pete, questions, comments?
No, I do not.
And Nate?
No, thanks.
Kristen?
Of course I do. My quick question, well, it's a quick question, relatively speaking. Just wondering how our practice has changed from what we were doing, say, a week or two ago to today, as far as teachers are concerned. Just so people are aware, in general, the public.
I shouldn't have made the joke about not unmuting, huh? Ted, you're on mute, I think.
Okay, there we go. So we've kind of moved into a little bit different phase where we're providing students with new material, so that we're going to progress along that path so that we're moving forward instead of review. And that's really the biggest change. And then providing, the biggest thing is providing more project-based learning opportunities at home. And so I had a conversation with Mr. McCarthy today. We're talking about the possibility to connect our high school students a little bit more to maybe, well, we're not giving them points toward their grade, maybe incentivize it where if they do X amount of work, they'll get so many extra points to their final grade. but it's basically introducing new material.
Thanks.
Bruce, questions, comments?
I have none, Paul.
I just have one question. The town of Rentham apparently has been able to work with the state. They're going to continue to do the remote teaching through April vacation and finish the school year a week earlier. I don't know if you've heard that, if that's possible or worth considering.
So this has been DESE has left it up to the local communities to decide whether to do that or not. I know that a couple of area schools are considering doing it. My feeling is this. There's potential that we don't get back this year, but there's also potential we will get back this year. I think because our education's been so greatly interrupted, ending school early this year, to me, doesn't make sense. I think extending the year out as long as possible to June 19th keeps our students connected to education just that little bit longer. And if we are able to come back, I really want to have as many days with kids in the building so they go back into some normal habits, getting up in the morning, getting back into the normal habit of school for as many days as possible. I think that, I know that one community, one of our neighbors is looking to do this, and they'll be out on June 14th. So now we've had this interrupt in education, and then from June 14th till almost Labor Day, for most of the students, there'll be no formal, and not that the 19th makes that much of a difference, but it's at least 1 week longer that they're connected to education. That's my feeling. And I also think that families do need a break as well. When families are together with, I've talked to a number of families recently that have, one family in particular today, they have 4 children. They came and picked up another tablet, trying to juggle 2 computers of 4 students trying to get onto the classroom experience is very taxing. And there's a lot of pressure on families. To take a week where people can just take a deep breath and just not worry about that, I think makes a lot of sense at this point in time. That's just my opinion.
And then I don't know whether you've gotten any further or what the timeline is again, or maybe it's just a repeat for folks who didn't see the first. What are you doing with graduation when you'd have to make a decision on the what, where, how?
Mrs. McCarthy's had a couple of meetings now with parents, and we're holding out as long as possible in hopes that we're going to be able to do this. If not, we will look to do alternative, pushing it on to June or possibly the July, possibly doing an outdoor graduation, possibly doing it in our field house, possibly mechanics hall. We're holding out hope that we will be able to have that later in the year. At this point, they have not pulled the trigger on the prom or graduation.
Prompt any questions, or are we all good on that?
Good, thanks.
Jump to the next item on the agenda. Item 5 is Nancy Koninsky with the indirect cost allocation agreement.
Okay, hello. So this agreement you've looked at previously, and there were some questions about the form. So I circled back with our auditors, and this was a form that the auditors have given us to use. And so my recommendation is, since this form the auditors gave to us to use, and I would like to recommend that we keep it as it's presented and add the one sentence that the auditors have advised us to use. Our town accountant works off of this document to give me the necessary figures for the end of year report. So I really didn't want to change it any more than we had to, than adding that one sentence. And that's my update on the indirect cost allocation agreement.
Great. What I would look for is a motion and a second, and then we'll open to discussion.
I move to approve the change to the indirect cost allocation agreement as presented. Edwards.
Jerome, second.
Pete, questions, comments?
Just for the record, can we read that sentence out that's being added to that document?
Absolutely. The town's OPEB allocations are not eligible for net school spending.
Simple enough.
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nate, questions?
None at this time. Thank you.
Kristen?
Sorry, malfunction there. No.
And Bruce?
No questions.
I have no questions. So it's a roll call vote. Pete?
Tough sigh.
Jerome, I.
Clark, aye.
Edwards, aye.
Brennan, I. Carries 5-0.
Great.
Next item on the agenda is the Student Opportunity Plan. It's, Ted Friend.
Before we jump to that, Nancy just had a couple of other things under COVID-19 that she just needed to go over with the committee.
Excellent.
Just a
Let's,
couple things. Last week, it was, someone mentioned about the trash delivery and what we were doing with that. So Roger, we spoke to him and he was already ahead of the game. He stopped that about 3 weeks ago. So we're calling them when we need a pickup and they're fine doing that under our contract. So that worked out good. And then I wanted to update you with transportation as to where we are at this point in time. So I'm working with other school districts that use the same provider as us, which is AA Transportation. And the group is going to speak to AA Transportation and go over with them what expenses they currently have to kind of determine what we're going to end up paying. We know that they laid off their drivers. Our goal is to ensure that their company remains viable and sustainable, but at the same time, we want AA to realize that this is a shared pain between them and us. So hopefully we can negotiate a rate that works for both parties. So they're going to be talking, there's two people who head up the group, and they're going to be talking to Ron from AA this week. So at the next meeting, I should have a better update for you. I just wanted to let you know where we stand on that. And then in regards to food services, we received some good news. We received a waiver that provides us receiving reimbursement for all breakfasts and lunches that we're giving out during the school closure. So we'll be given reimbursement at the free rate, which is $1.84 for breakfast and $3.09 for lunch. What we're waiting to determine is how far back this waiver goes. It came out a week ago, so it's not clear yet if the waiver started a week ago or if it started on March 16th when the school closure happened. So once I have more answers on that, I can give you a better idea of where we stand financially, but it's good news because it will help our account. And those are the couple things that I wanted to update you on.
Pete, anything on those?
No, thanks, Nancy.
Nate?
No, thanks, Nancy. That's great work. Thank you.
Kristen?
I'm all good, thanks.
And Bruce?
All good.
Excellent. You think we can get Ted to jump to the Student Opportunity Plan?
Yes.
Excellent.
Just real quick, when the state developed their new funding formula for the state, the updated Chapter 70, they're basically giving $1.7 billion additional dollars over the next 7 years to 15 districts. Sutton will continue to receive, well, depending on the budget, the most we will receive is $30 per pupil, which is about $38,000 a year. So because they changed this law, because they're putting so much money toward the urban districts, in the law, they required us to give a plan for how we plan on spending the $38,000. And so the commissioner recognizes that for districts like ours, it really doesn't do anything. $38,000, our budget goes up probably $600,000 when it's all said and done annually. So all we did was take a very simple approach to this. We're going to add health in K to 5 so that we have health education in grades K to 12 starting next year. And that's how we wrote this student opportunity plan for the state. We've submitted it already. We did talk about this with the vision committee last year. We've talked about it with the district learning team. And we've talked about it with the restructuring team. So I think we've covered all our bases, and it's just really a paperwork issue. But the school committee needs to vote approval for this plan.
So given that there's a vote for the plan, I'd look for a motion. Look for a motion from Pete.
I move to approve the student opportunity plan for 2021 through 2023 as presented.
And if Nate would second it.
Second, Jerome.
Neither of you had to do that, but it's helpful.
It's a bit of a transition over to the unmute, find what to say.
Right. And then finding the right screen. Pete, do you have questions or comments?
I do not, thank you.
Nate,
I do not, thank you.
Kristen,
I'm good, thanks.
and Bruce?
I'm just confused. If this has already been sent in, why are we voting on it?
So it was due April 1st, and so they didn't get us the forms until the middle of March. And then all this, so we wouldn't have had time, but the due date was April 1st. So they said we could submit it and then come back to the committee to get a vote. And so we were trying to be compliant. Now they're seeking a waiver from the state to extend this deadline. But that's why it went that way. They were trying to figure out how to do this.
The only question I have really is in commitment 3, there are metrics, and it mentions outcome metrics and targets. I don't see targets, and I worried a little bit about metrics that talk about number of students referred to outside services and number of students referred to internal services. I didn't know if that was trying to somehow pit one against the other, or if you were using a metric like that, I'm not sure where you're headed. I worry about, saying, well, listen, the more we can get into internal services, the more cost effective. And I'm not sure if that's really an appropriate metric, if that's what it drives.
No, I think what we're looking at is just being able to manage and provide the services for our own district so that we're not sending kids out of district. So we're able to manage and provide more mental health services within our own. So it's so we're able to maintain it here in Sutton.
So how do you set a target on something like that?
I think you have to establish a baseline, but it's hard. I mean, this is the first time we've done this. We're going to see what comes of this year, see what happens with our health education. So much is in the air now anyway. I mean, it's hard to predict what's going to happen 2 or 3 years from now as it is. But we're hoping that by having health, we minimize the amount of kids that are having to have outside services. I don't know how you put a number on that. I'm sure you could. I'm sure you could track how many students are referred.
Well, and if there isn't a target, or there doesn't really make sense to have a target, then it doesn't make sense to have it as a metric. Yeah. I didn't know whether you wanted to answer. I see. She's
Oh,
next.
So I guess more what I'd rather see here is that the kids are well, it's a positive metric instead of a negative metric. So wouldn't you rather see them demonstrating some of the skills we're reinforcing and giving them?
In truth, this was an exercise in paperwork. If I'm being honest, and I am being honest, it's an exercise in paperwork. The state is giving us $38,000. They put this into the law for the districts that are receiving $850 per pupil. It's not put in the law for $30 per pupil. And so we approach this simply, what is it? And that's how all of our smaller districts that are receiving no additional money are doing. It's simply doing the paperwork, putting it in writing, and that's how we approached it. It's going to sit, unfortunately, in somebody's desk or in a file somewhere, and that's all this is.
Kristen.
So are we having numbers we want to meet or not meet? And then what happens if we surpass those? Say, for instance, we're referring more kids to outside versus them using our internal services. Do we get penalized? Does something happen as a result of that? Or is it what?
No one's going to look at this, to be quite honest with you. If you're Worcester and you get $22 million additional dollars, they want to make sure that the money is being spent for educational purposes and to improve their system. They understand that the rest of the 85% or 88% of the districts, it really is just a paperwork issue, and nothing more than that. So no one's going to come at us. We're not going to be penalized for anything. And had they given us $800 per pupil, we would have had a much more detailed plan, and it would be more than just adding a health educator for K-5.
No other questions. It's a roll call vote. Peter.
Tufts, aye.
Jerome, aye.
Edwards, aye.
Kristen.
Clark, aye. More malfunctions.
We can hear you now. Do you have a vote?
Clark, aye.
Brennan, aye. Carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is school choice. This is Ted Friend again.
So April, we have to vote, or the school committee has to vote if they're going to open up any additional slots for school choice. It would be my recommendation to the committee, with these uncertain financial times that we're facing, that we open up 10 spots in 9th grade. We've had 9 applications for 9th grade for next year. And BVT has accepted 28 for next year for the 8th grade. And, you know, that's probably where we'll end up. It might go down a couple, it might go up a couple, but it should be less than 30, which would bring our class size down to about 85 next year going in. So adding 10 additional students in 9th grade will keep class sizes at a very good level. The other thing we have to be cautious of, we'll be graduating 11 school choice students. And so if we're able to get 7 or 8 or 9 coming in, every year we have 2 or 3 or 4 students that families move out of town, but they stay in the high school. And all I'm trying to do is balance out this account at this point, not knowing where our economy is going next year, not knowing what the town will be able to provide for education, education funding. So that would be my recommendation.
So I'd look for a motion.
This is
I
tough.
make a motion. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
Go ahead, Pete.
It's all you, Nate.
Make a motion to approve opening 10 school choice seats in grade 9 as recommended by the superintendent.
Tough second.
Peter, have you got questions, comments?
Just for, again, for the record, what is the current ninth grade, Ted?
The current ninth grade. You mean the number of students?
Yeah.
No, I don't have that in front of me.
Well, it's right in that ballpark though, right?
Yes, yeah. The class size is coming in. This is where we start to see the decline in the numbers of students coming through. Last year, there was the class, I want to say, was 122 in 8th grade. This year it's down to 116. Then they start going into the 110s.
Mm-hmm.
So
And what about private school besides BVT?
I don't know of those numbers at all yet.
Okay. That's all for me.
And Nate?
Yeah, just offhand, I believe we extended, well, we had a number we agreed upon last year. Do you remember if any of the invites were taken for 9th grade for school choice? I know we've had that in the past. We've opened seats and we've not filled them.
We filled all the slots last year.
We did. Do you remember how many it was offhand? Roughly.
I want to say it was 6.
Okay, thank you.
I was gonna say 7, so it's right there.
All right.
And Kristen?
I'm still not sure how I feel about this, so I don't have any questions, but I'm just not sure.
Bruce?
I've got nothing.
You're getting dark, Bruce. It's getting dark in your house.
Think of the savings. Yeah, most of my questions you answered with the others. You say it's about 110 in the 7th and 6th grades also?
Yeah, once
So,
we get past this year, the incoming classes all hover between, we had a low of like 93 and a high of like 110 in grades K through 7.
so there's a certain reality that the class sizes are going to get smaller for a while. This potentially artificially inflates it for a period of time, and then eventually we got to talk about what's the right size school. So much like Kristen, well, I've always been concerned about using this as a revenue source, which is what we're trying to do. Kristen, you had a comment?
Yeah, my only other concern is I know we've had a boom in building more houses. And I've seen up and down my street, more kids have moved in. So I'm just concerned, that, okay, this year it looks a little lower. And then all of a sudden over the summer, we have, I don't know, 10, 12 kids move in, across. I guess I'm just concerned about it. And I'm not necessarily comfortable, as you said, with using it as a revenue source. And this has been, I guess, my concern the whole time I've been on school committee. So ultimately, I just don't, 10's a lot. Am I comfortable with that? I don't know. So.
I get to a point where it's, I agree, it's an odd year, and the difference between 7 and 10 isn't 10. It's about 3 or 4. Other comments or questions?
Yeah,
Nate?
just real quick. I think the whole board is in that boat. We have that concern. We've had in-depth conversations back as far as 10 years ago. The concern of, focusing on the revenue stream. To me, the bigger concern was when we start at the smaller grades. I have a larger concern when we start at kindergarten, because if we do get a boom, you now have a kid that's in district that could impact the numbers. I think I have a little bit more confidence starting in 9th grade. Just as we've seen the numbers trickle down, we're committing to 4 years versus the entire K through 12. But that being said, even voting for this, it's not something that I think I easily look at and say, yeah, it's no problem. It's a money grab. I look at it as we have capacity, and we have the room in the school at the time. But I do, as we go to younger grades, I keep that heavily in mind. So that's my thoughts on it. Ted?
This is all going to go away. You know, everything you're bringing up. When was the last time we brought in a student in the elementary school? 5 years. So there are probably no school choice kids at all in our elementary school. And so pretty soon, the only school choice that we're going to have are going to be in our high school. And so this is all going to go away, except for in high school, if you continue to allow ninth graders to join our school district.
Anyone else? Bruce?
Yeah, Ted, two questions. When does the application for school choice, when does that period end? And historically, of the number of kids that apply, how many actually accept and enroll in the school system, in the high school?
Sure. We will pull people can apply through the month of April. The first Monday in May, if we have to do a lottery, that's when we do it. So that's when it's over. And it varies. This year we did have 6 kids. I think this is the first time we actually filled the slots that we put out there for ninth grade. What normally happens, we'll have 9 applications. Chances are only 4 or 5 maybe 6 will fill out the roster. Because I think what happens is parents put it in and then the kids say, I don't want to leave my friends. And so I'd be surprised if we got 9 or 10. I think you're probably more looking at maybe 6 or 7 students.
Any other questions? This is roll call, so we'll go with Pete.
Tufts, aye.
Jerome, I.
Clark, aye.
Edwards, aye.
Brennan, I. That might be the first time in 1,000 years that you've gotten a 5-0 unanimous vote on a school choice motion. This remote video thing, I tell you. Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's update. Oh, we're so close.
So just a couple of things more. I've been very encouraged by the amount of emails and phone calls I've received from the community. I think we've approached it pretty well. I think we've balanced out what we're providing for families. I think Kristen's point last week is that the biggest concern I have with all of this is the mental health fallout from all of this. But overall, we seem to be managing it pretty well. At this point, I've received no state discussions whether we're going to extend this beyond May 4th. There's been no guidance on that yet. If I do hear guidance, I will let you know. The FinCom public hearing has been put off. I don't have any dates yet. And they're also putting off the town meeting. I think they're looking to do the town meeting late into June to get a better sense of where we are economically, get a sense of if there's going to be additional stimulus money. I have now started to turn my attention to the what ifs. I'm going to start that conversation with the administrators tomorrow morning and start thinking about next year, thinking about what if revenues are down and what we're going to do. It is ironic that we started the restructuring committee this year thinking about, if there was a downturn in the economy. It may turn out that the federal government will prop us up a little bit for a year or two, but obviously tax revenue is going to be down at the federal, state, and local level. And so we need to have contingency plans in place We also have to have contingency plans in place in case we have to shut down school next year, or we have plenty of lead time. How do we provide, if we have to, now again, I'm just talking theoretically, if we have to close school for a period of time, we need to continue education going forward. We were caught a little, we're not caught off a little off guard. We're off guard. We're not prepared for this, but we now have had some experience. So those are things, that's kind of my mind shift as I go forward.
Pete, questions?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
And Nate,
I'm all set. Thank you.
Kristen,
Good for now.
and Bruce?
No questions on that.
Great. Just one piece, I agree with your thought around, what do we do revenue-wise, looking at contingencies for next year. I think we also need to look at the other side also. That's a lot also in there. Last time we talked a little bit about when you bring the kids back, if there's a lot of catch up from what they've missed this year, should we be starting to consider rearranging the budget and getting more people in front of students? Is there a year of temporary trying to get class sizes down? I don't know any of those make any sense, but I'd sort of like the professionals to give some thought to, regardless of how this year ends, when we start up next year, the budget that we planned assumed this was a normal year. Would we do something particularly different? And give it some thought, get some feedback from the administration, and if you think it's worthy of more discussion here, then we'll bring it back for that.
I had the conversation with Karen Taranzini this morning about summer school. I did tell her to plan for a normal summer school. However, they are going to have to plan for additional services for special needs students. But this affects all students. So in the end, as you know, we are not the federal government and we can't print money. And so we're going to put our thinking caps on and look at how we allocate resources next year to provide the best possible education we can for all kids, and hopefully be able to do some additional remediation for our students, because this is a big change.
So part of why I asked that is I do think that we hold school choice for rainy days. It's not just to try to keep your annual budget running. So if we think that that's worthy of some conversation because we think we have to make a larger than expected expenditure out of that, I'd rather have that conversation sooner than later so that you get a sense from the committee around where the whole committee's at on that.
I think as we move forward, we're going to have this part of our regular discussion. Once we start getting a sense of what the legislature plans on providing for funding for us and what the town believes they can provide for us. Yes, we will look at all contingencies.
Just one other sort of, as you're having those conversations, the like the grocery stores with now taped lines and trying to limit how many people are in, and the notion of social distancing. If you did bring the kids back this year with any amount of luck, I think you also have to start to give some thought to how do you configure the school system? What are the new social norms that will remain even though we start back up again? Even masks or wherever they had on that. So again, I'd just like to ask that you with your staff start to talk through what are the things you're going to need to do.
That's the conversation that starts tomorrow morning.
New business agenda items, action items. Pete?
I have nothing.
Nate?
Wash your hands.
Kristen?
I got a recommendation. Ted, can we get smaller bins for dog waste on campus?
Only if they get smaller dogs.
Well, those cans get pretty full. And like I said, they're huge. You fill them with water. Who wants to empty them? So how about some smaller cans with lids?
I'll talk to Roger tomorrow.
Because people are actually using them. All right, most people. Be nice if everybody did. But to have a place where you can put it where,
Or at least
Forget
put
more.
those in the bottom of the can.
yeah,
Okay.
thanks.
You empty them, yes.
And Bruce?
Same thing as last week, just a reminder to, that we do have people in town in need. Michelle is open at the food pantry. If you do make a run to the store, please try to keep those folks in mind. And Red Cross is still looking for blood donations. Go online, make an appointment. We can all help out.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you. That's we can all help out if nothing else, count to 3. Everybody's been locked in their house for a while. So when you see somebody tense, count to 3. Couple of items. This video and all the other town meetings that are occurring, you can see on YouTube. You get to it through the town website. I found was the easiest way to get there, and it'll get you right to the YouTube videos. I suppose if you're watching it, you know that already. It's tough though. If you get there, I noticed it brings you to a whole bunch of Carol Burnett skits, and so I think you're going to see people watch 3 minutes of us and then click over to the Carol Burnett skits. If Jesse's listening, it's tick season, not just COVID, but it's tick season. So go outside, go for a walk with just the people you're living with, 6 feet away from everybody. Do like Ted, check for ticks. You can also find Ted's video, Mr. Friend's Neighborhood. That's up there on YouTube and probably worth 4 or 5 minutes of your watch. You can learn about paper towels and how well they work. And then just the last piece is for the rest of the committee, Bruce and I will get on the phone and talk with Ted a little bit as the negotiations, STA negotiations subcommittee. They do have a proposal on the table that we've got to read through. So no news there other than we're trying to figure out how to get through next year. One more time. Pete, you want to make a motion?
Yep, this is Pete Tufts. I will make a motion to adjourn.
Nate Jerome, I second.
So roll call vote, Pete.
Tufts, aye.
Jerome, I.
Clark, aye.
Edwards, aye.
Brennan, I carries 5-0. Thanks, everybody. It's great.
Thanks. Have a great night.
Have a good one. Be safe.
Thank you. Good night.